I used to fly drones for a living, mostly for real estate companies and small-town farmers who wanted wide shots of their land. It wasn't exciting work, but it paid the bills, and I liked the quiet of being out in the fields, away from people. Last October, right before Halloween, a man named Russell hired me to do a crop inspection on his property. He said it was a family farm, though when I looked it up later, the land had been unoccupied for nearly a decade. He claimed he'd recently inherited it and wanted to see how bad the overgrowth was before investing in a new harvest. It was a strange request because usually I meet clients in person, but Russell insisted we handle everything by phone. His voice was low, quiet, almost hesitant. The only thing he kept saying was, "Don't go too close to the center of the field. Just film from above." That should have been my first red flag. The day I drove out, the sky was the color of rust. A cold wind rolled across endless rows of corn that had long turned brown, dry, and brittle. The stalks whispered against each other like old paper. There wasn't a single house in sight, just this field that stretched for miles, bordered by a tree line so thick it looked black. I parked by the old fence and set up my drone. The soil was cracked dry. Not a single bird made a sound. Even the wind seemed to hush as the drone lifted off. From above, the view was eerie. The field wasn't evenly planted. The rows were warped, curling toward the center like a whirlpool. In the middle of that spiral, the corn was darker, almost black. I zoomed in, thinking maybe it was burned soil, but it looked wet. I took a few still shots and panned slowly across the property. The radio connection crackled, but I kept getting faint distortion, static, then this low rhythm like a pulse. I thought it was wind interference, until I noticed something else. Something moved between the rows. At first, I figured it was a deer, maybe a coyote. But as I followed it, the shape didn't move like an animal. It was tall. Too tall. The way it walked, slow, swaying slightly, made my stomach knot. I zoomed in further, but right when the camera began to focus, the feed cut out. Black screen. Static. Then silence. I cursed, tried resetting the controller, and waited for signal. When it finally reconnected, the drone was still hovering, but the shape was gone. I turned it toward the tree line, and that's when I saw something else. There were holes, dozens of them, dug in uneven circles around the field. Each one maybe 3 feet wide. Some filled with water, others just dark pits. From that height, they looked like open mouths. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Russell. "You're too low. Bring it back. Now." I hadn't told him I'd launched the drone yet. The message came again. "They don't like being seen." My chest tightened. The drone was still recording. I tilted the camera down again, just once, before I started bringing it home. The black patch in the middle of the field seemed to shimmer, the soil moving, breathing almost. And in the center of that black mass, I saw movement again. Only this time, there were several of them. Shapes standing in a perfect circle, tall, rigid, unmoving. Their heads were bowed, faces hidden beneath something pale, like sacks or masks. My rational brain told me they were scarecrows. Farmers put those up all the time. But the longer I watched, the less they looked like props. Their shadows shifted. The wind picked up, but the stalks around them didn't move. Then the drone's battery alert chimed. I pulled back on the control stick, but the screen froze again, just as one of the figures turned its head upward, directly toward the camera. Static filled the feed. The last image before it cut completely was a white face, blank, stretched too thin, staring straight up. I ran to the center of the field like an idiot, calling out, trying to spot the drone. The corn swallowed me. Every direction looked the same. The stalks towered over me, the air heavy with rot. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Not mine. Soft, dragging, like someone walking barefoot on dry soil. They circled. I yelled out, "Russell?" No answer. The steps stopped. I tried retracing my path, pushing through the corn until I stumbled into the open. And there it was. My drone, lying on the ground, propellers still twitching weakly. The battery was melted. The metal casing warped, as if it had been left in a fire. When I looked up, the field was perfectly still. But I could feel it, something standing just beyond the rows, watching. I grabbed the drone and bolted to my truck. The engine stalled twice before it started. I didn't look back once. That night, I uploaded the footage to my laptop. Most of it was corrupted, lines of static, distorted colors, except for one clip. exactly 13 seconds long. It showed the drone hovering above the field, facing the center. The camera shook slightly, and then one of those figures turned. Its head jerked unnaturally fast until the blank face filled the frame. And then frame by frame, it smiled. Not a normal smile. The mouth stretched wide, too wide until it split. Then the video ended. I deleted it. I told myself it was a glitch, that the cold air messed with the sensors, that I imagined the smile. But 2 days later, I got another message. You dropped something in the field. Attached was a photo, my drone case, sitting right outside my apartment door. There was no return address, no footprints in the hallway. The next morning, I found a small pile of corn husks on my doormat, damp and black with soil. Since then, I've moved twice. I stopped taking drone work completely, but every once in a while, I still hear it, faint through the static of my phone when I'm out of town, that same low hum that filled the recording right before the signal died. And last week, someone left a message on my voicemail. The voice was soft, slow, almost familiar. They say the field's growing again. You should come see. Then silence. I deleted it right away, but sometimes at night, when the wind brushes past my window, it sounds like rows of dry stalks whispering my name. My uncle's property in Nebraska always creeped me out as a kid. It wasn't the old house, though that was bad enough. It was the field behind it. 20 acres of wheat, golden and endless, with one thing standing dead center, a scarecrow. It had been there for as long as anyone remembered. My uncle used to joke that the land came with it, like it was part of the deal. Even back then, I hated how it looked. Not the usual flannel shirt and straw hat kind. This one was wrong. Its clothes were too tight, like they'd been nailed onto the body instead of stuffed. The head was a burlap sack, but the mouth was stitched with wire, not thread. And the eyes weren't buttons. They were smooth and black, like marbles. He used to tell me, never go near it. It keeps the crows away, but only if you don't touch it. I thought it was just a story to scare me. When I turned 24, my uncle passed away. Heart attack, alone in that house. The will left the property to me, which was a surprise since I hadn't visited in years. I didn't want the land, but I couldn't sell it right away. Someone had to go up, clear out the house, and deal with the paperwork. So one weekend in early November, I drove out there. The house was smaller than I remembered, swallowed by weeds and dead trees. The air smelled like old hay and rain. Inside, everything was coated with dust, dishes still on the counter, his jacket hanging by the door, like he'd stepped out and never came back. I tried to shake the unease, told myself it was just grief mixed with childhood fear. But when I looked through the back window, that feeling came rushing back. The scarecrow was still there. Same clothes, same slumped posture, except now it was facing the house. I froze. I could have sworn that when I was a kid, it had faced the field. I went out anyway. The wheat was waist high, dry and whispering in the wind. Each step made a dull, papery sound. As I got closer, I saw more details. The sack head stained dark around the eyes, the wire around the mouth rusted like dried blood. I told myself I'd just check it once, for peace of mind. The pole it hung on was old but solid. The clothes were damp, like they'd been outside through every season. I thought about taking it down, but something about touching it felt wrong. The air around it was colder, heavier. That's when I noticed something else. At its feet, half buried in dirt, was a small wooden cross. My uncle's initials carved into it. I laughed nervously, thinking maybe it was an old marker for one of his pets, but the feeling in my chest said otherwise. That night, I tried to sleep in the house. The wind howled through the cracks, and I could hear the creak of the barn doors outside. Sometime after midnight, I woke up. No sound, just this heavy pressure in the room, like someone standing close. My phone screen lit up beside the bed. One notification. Motion detected, back camera. My heart dropped. I had set up a cheap security camera earlier to keep an eye on the field. I opened the app. The feed showed the scarecrow. It was standing in the same place, the wind bending the wheat around it. But then, just barely visible in the grainy dark, the head turned. Not a big movement, just enough to angle toward the camera. I told myself it was a glitch, wind distortion, anything but real. I closed the app and stared at the ceiling until sunrise. The next morning, I went back out to the field. I didn't even make it halfway before I stopped. The scarecrow had moved closer to the fence, at least 20 feet from where it was before. Its head was still tilted toward the house. I checked for footprints, drag marks, anything, but the ground was untouched. No tire tracks, no prints, just wheat, untouched except for a circle around where it stood. Inside the circle, the stalks were blackened, burned. That afternoon, I drove into town to talk to the sheriff. He listened, patient but skeptical, said I was probably dealing with trespassers, maybe kids messing around. I offered to show him the photos, but the signal was bad out there, so he said he'd stop by later in the week. I came back before dark and tried not to look at the field. I cooked dinner, turned the radio on static. Every station was just static. Even my phone struggled to connect. When the clock hit midnight again, I heard it. Footsteps. Outside on the porch. Slow. Deliberate. Boards creaking one by one. I grabbed my flashlight and looked through the peephole. Nothing. Just the empty porch, wind tugging at the door. I told myself it was an animal. But when I turned to go back to bed, I saw something through the window. A figure standing at the edge of the field, barely visible in the moonlight. The scarecrow. Closer again. I watched, frozen, as its head twitched, a sudden, jerky movement, and its arm lifted, pointing straight at the house. I shut the curtains. Locked every door and window. Didn't sleep. When dawn came, I packed my bag. I wasn't staying another night. I went to grab the car keys from the counter and saw muddy handprints on the kitchen window. Long, narrow fingers pressed from the outside. I bolted. When I reached the car, I glanced once more at the field. The scarecrow was gone. The pole was empty, the rope dangling loose. I didn't look back as I drove away. Later that evening, I got a call from the sheriff. He said he went out to check the property, found nothing unusual, except the scarecrow. He laughed, said it was creepy as hell, but still there, facing the field again. That should have made me feel better, but his next words froze me. Weirdest thing though, I swear that thing's wearing a different shirt. Looks newer. Plaid. Red and black. I was wearing a red and black plaid shirt when I left that morning. I hung up and never went back. A month later, I got a letter from a local real estate agent. The property had been sold. Attached was a photo of the listing, the same old house, same field. And standing right beside the new for sale sign, clear as day, was the scarecrow. Arms outstretched, head tilted, facing the camera. Every night since, I wake up to my motion alerts going off again. But now, it's not a field on the screen. It's my backyard. And in one of the recordings, behind the fence, just barely visible between the trees, there's something standing tall and still, wearing a red and black shirt. I drive long hours for work. Deliveries mostly. The kind of routes that take you across state lines and into places you wouldn't even know were still on a map. Last October, I was driving through rural Pennsylvania, running late on a shipment. It was close to midnight when my GPS suddenly lost signal. I'd been on the same stretch of road for nearly an hour. No towns, no gas stations, not even a billboard. Just pine trees and fog. Then out of nowhere, my headlights caught a sign. The Hollow Motel vacancy. The letters were faded, half burned out, but at that hour, it felt like salvation. I pulled into the gravel lot. The place looked abandoned, cracked neon flickering weakly above the office window, a couple of old cars sitting rusted near the side. I rang the bell inside the office. For a while, nothing happened. Then a man stepped out from the back. Thin, pale, wearing an old beige shirt that looked a few sizes too big. He smiled, but something about it felt off. "Late night, huh?" he said. His voice was calm, almost too calm. "Yeah, just need a place to crash for a few hours," I replied. He slid the key across the counter, room 6. The tag was cracked plastic, like it had been handled too many times. I asked if there was any Wi-Fi or working outlets. He chuckled. "Signal's not good out here. Just rest. You'll be fine by morning." That sentence stuck with me. You'll be fine by morning. The hallway smelled like mildew and old wood. My shoes left faint prints in the dust. When I opened the door to my room, it creaked like it hadn't been opened in years. Inside, there was one bed, a dresser, and a TV that looked older than I was. The wallpaper was peeling, the air heavy with that still, unused smell. But I was too tired to care. I locked the door, kicked off my boots, and collapsed onto the bed. Sometime around 2 a.m., I woke up. Not from a dream, just this sudden, sharp feeling that something wasn't right. The air had gone cold, and I realized the TV was on. Static, white noise filling the room. I hadn't turned it on. At first, I thought maybe it had come on automatically, but when I grabbed the remote, it didn't work. The buttons didn't even click. I reached for the power cord, but the plug wasn't even in the socket. I stood there, staring at the screen. Through the static, for just a split second, I thought I saw an image, like a hallway. Same as the one outside my room. Then the power cut completely. Pitch black. The only sound was the hum of the fluorescent light in the bathroom, faintly flickering behind the half-closed door. Then came the knock. 3 slow knocks on the door. I froze. It wasn't the kind of knock people use when they expect an answer. It was careful. Testing. Like whoever it was already knew I was awake. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. After a few seconds, another sound, a dragging step outside my door, like boots scraping across gravel. I slowly approached the peephole. The hallway was dark, but there was a shadow at the end, tall, still, maybe facing me. I whispered to myself that it was just the manager checking the rooms. Maybe he forgot someone checked in. But then the shadow tilted its head, a slow, unnatural angle, and I heard the whisper. Room 6. It wasn't said loud, just enough that I heard it through the wood. I stepped back, grabbed my phone. No service. Of course. The flashlight barely worked. I waited there for maybe 5 minutes, staring at the door, until the silence returned. Finally, I told myself I'd pack up and leave. I opened the door. The hallway was empty, but something caught my eye: muddy footprints. Large ones, leading away from my door toward the office. I followed them. They ended at room 4. The door was open slightly. Inside, the bed was made untouched. But the smell, it was thick, sweet, like rotting flowers. The bathroom door was half shut, and something dark had smeared across the tiles, handprints, dragging down toward the drain. I turned to leave, but then I saw the photos on the dresser. They were all of me. Different shots, me at the counter, walking to my room, sleeping in bed. Each one printed on faded, yellowed paper like they'd been developed years ago. That was the moment I ran. The office was empty when I got there. The bell was gone. The counter had dust on it again, thick, like no one had touched it in months. I looked outside. My truck was still in the lot, but now there were more cars. Dozens. Some old, some new. No license plates. All covered in dust. When I stepped out the door, every light in the motel flickered on. Every single door in that long, rotting hallway creaked open at once. And for a second, just a second, I saw them. Figures standing in the doorways. Men, women, children. All pale, motionless. Faces blurred, heads tilted just slightly too far. Watching. The static from the TV came back, louder now, echoing through the hall like a scream. I bolted to my truck, turned the key. It started instantly. I tore out of the lot, so fast gravel hit the windows. The last thing I saw in the rearview mirror was the sign. The Hollow Motel. Only now the word vacancy was gone. In its place, flickering in faint red. Full. I didn't stop driving until sunrise. When I finally got a signal again, I searched for the place. Nothing. No listings, no photos, not even a local record. A few days later, I stopped at a diner and told the story to an older guy sitting at the counter. He didn't even look surprised. Just said, "The Hollow? That place burned down back in '96. Whole family ran it. People say the guests never left." I laughed it off, said I must have mixed up the name. But when I went back to my truck, there was something tucked under the wiper blade, a room key. Cracked plastic. Room 6.